Hello, welcome back, everyone. Hello. So it is Wednesday. This is episode 5 of Gamer Stories, and I'm very excited to have as our guest today, PaladinHulk, who I've known for 3 years now. About
basically forever.
Basically forever. Basically. So this is a thing that I'm doing over the summer where I just want to basically talk to gamers and talk about their lives and find out what their stories are and see how all of us come to gaming in different ways and just think about, like, learn new things about all the people that I know around, and hopefully everyone else can learn things too. And so here's the thing. All of you in chat, feel free to ask questions, bring up thoughts. If we're talking about something and it brings to mind something that you're interested in, that you think about something, just put it in there and we will talk to you about it and engage with you on it. Like, just
as best we can.
As best we can. So, PH.
Yes.
Welcome in. Thank you for being here.
I'm glad to be here.
So, you're from the Netherlands.
Indeed I am.
I have a really important question, probably the most important question that I'm going to ask you today.
Where's that located?
No, that would be very American of me. But here's my question. We often also call it Holland. What's up with that? Like, what are your feelings on Holland versus the Netherlands? Can you explain this to me?
I live in South Holland, which is one of the 2 provinces that are actually called Holland.
Oh.
So that's the difference. 2 out of the however many there are of our provinces, I should know this, but I'm terrible, are Holland, and the rest is the Netherlands. But we also mix it up, like we call the entire country Holland, so it's perfectly normal.
I'm going to give you a volume boost while we're at it.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit more. I
like more volume.
Yeah. Thank you, Jer. See, thank you.
That's why we keep mods around.
This is true. So I want to start actually with a question that's really interesting to me. So Dungeons and Dragons happens, it's a big deal, but in different countries, it does or doesn't make it across in different ways. And I know that different countries would often have their own games that would sort of be the number one game, sort of their main competitor, right? So like in Germany, it was Das Schwarze Auge was the big game. And I suppose maybe Warhammer for the UK. Different games have different ones that are their home game. Was there a Dutch RPG that hit big?
Not a specific Dutch one. The group in my city liked Earth Dawn a lot, to the point where I think they're still playing it.
Is Earth Dawn is that a Dutch game?
I have no idea. But Google knows. Let's find out.
Google knows.
Tell me, Google.
But because I'm wondering if there are any sort of local RPGs coming out of the Netherlands. Hey, Sal.
An American game company. So
yeah. Earth Dawn is the fantasy equivalent of Shadowrun. Yeah, that's right. Huh. So Barantor wants to know, what is your favorite streamed game, both viewed and participated in?
That I both view and participate in. That rules out Critical Role.
No, you can do both. That's 2 different questions.
It's got to be Layla for the viewed one.
Yeah.
I love me some Layla. That's like the first one that both, like, that got me creatively involved because I started writing fanfic. Like, I got really attached to all the NPCs, and it was such a great experience to watch every episode. And obviously, I didn't play in that, so the one I played in would be Maggie's charity game. I really love being a part of that, both because it's charity and we do good work, and I feel like I'm making a positive contribution by what I can bring to the whole thing. So that's a really great experience. It's everything I could want.
So how did you first come into RPGs? Like, tell me how you first started. How old were you? What was it? What happened?
I was like 12, 13, I think. I was just getting into high school. I had left behind all the horrible children that had bullied me throughout my previous school life. So I was really happy to be rid of them.
Middle school's the worst.
That's one school for us, like until 12, from infancy.
Oh,
so
that's
that
a long
was
time to be with a bunch of bullies.
same kids.
Ugh.
Great fun. Because I would show up to school in costume because I was a huge nerd, and I would have comic books with me, and they'd be all like, "Why don't you like soccer?" And I'm like, "I just don't. I don't know why."
Oh.
But I left them behind, so I got a chance to make new friends, and one of those friends that I made introduced me to first Warcraft 1, which I loved Warcraft 1. It's like orcs, and they're cool. I loved orcs. I loved that game. Played it to death.
You know, you do realize that this is episode 5 of Gamer Stories, and you're the third of 5 whose first RPG was Warhammer. I'm just pointing it out there.
No, my first actual RPG was Dungeons and Dragons, AD&D. I think 2nd edition of it, because that's what my friend had, and he and his friends were like just getting done with playing RPGs, which is really sad for me. But he introduced me to it, and I was like, "Can I play an orc? Because I like orcs." And he was like, "Well, they're not in the main book. I want to play an orc." He made it happen.
Sorry,
So I was
Warhammer. I think I said Warcraft. Pardon me. Go on.
tomato. It's all the same. I did play Warhammer with that guy as well, because that's what they were transitioning into. They were leaving behind playing RPGs and Dungeons and Dragons. They had done that. They had completed some kind of campaign. And they were done. And they were getting into Warhammer 40k. And I jumped on board with that too. They also played Magic, which I also jumped on board with. And then I was broke. How that happens. I love Dungeons and Dragons. Like, I would constantly be like, "Can we play Dungeons and Dragons?" He's like, "Fine." He was done with it.
Oh, he was done with it, right?
Yeah, he was kind of done with it. And that made sense. They'd done a whole campaign. They went from rags to riches. They were building some kind of theme park island in game, and you have to be playing for quite a while to get that sort of gold.
Yeah.
But like, I loved it. I played my orc fighter. I read about the paladin for the first time, which really left an impression on me.
How old were you?
Well, that was like 13, I think.
13,
12.
14 when you first encountered the paladin?
Yeah. And that was amazing to me, that there could be like a sort of person where you don't need to know anything about them other than the fact that they're a paladin, and you know what sort of a person they are. You can trust them. They're good people, because if they weren't, they wouldn't be a paladin. They would lose their powers. And I love that like instant communication of who you are, because I always got that wrong. People would see the autism that just flows off me, and more so back then, and they'd be like, "What kind of dude is this? What's up with him?" But if I was a paladin, they would know.
Right. So now you're gaming through high school. Did you GM?
Well, I'd left them behind because they were not playing D&D anymore. So I was looking to play more. Got another guy in my class who said he played, and I was like, "Sure, you'll come along," and that never happened. And one more class, and then it did happen, and I started playing Earth Dawn with those people. I was okay. I mean, there's orcs. I like orcs. And like, I don't really, I'm going to try something else. And then I played a girl for the first time, which I thought was cool. I had this vision of this badass female fighter who was also a bit of a rogue, being rude and like doing her own thing. And I encountered the unfortunate thing where teenage boys don't like girl characters and do horrible things to them. So she was raped on her first outing, which I didn't think was cool.
What is wrong with people sometimes?
I hated that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, she was like, a little down and dirty, like with crime and stuff. And my character stumbled across a camp of orcs, and orcs were just a normal player character race in Earth Dawn. So I was like, okay, I'll just talk to them. So I joined them at their fire and had a chat, and nope, that's how that ended.
Wow.
Yeah, that was less fun. So we left that GM behind, and the rest of the group sort of split off at that point. Not because of that, but just for loads of reasons. And we started to do Vampire. I loved Vampire I liked fantasy, but I loved the system of Vampire because it's really it's easy. You get your one attribute, you get your one ability, and you roll. And that was, I liked how dark it was, because that was a nice change. And we just did that for a while. And that I did start a GM, because I figured I can do this.
Yeah.
And I did that for my own friends that I was making until, love that. Then I was done with high school. I went to, first I went to school to become a teacher, and that didn't work out. And I ended up in a lab tech school.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I did a job test because my parents were like, "We don't know what you should do," and I was like, "I don't know what I should do. I have no clue." I thought I wanted to be a teacher, but that wasn't it. So they had me do it like a test to see what you're good at, and there was a lot of questions. Do you like socializing with people? I was like, "Nope." Like, well, you should be stuck in a lab all day then. But I don't like physics and chemistry. Doesn't matter.
Oh no!
Be in a lab, you.
That seems like a bad test.
Yeah, I agree. Because I should not be in a lab because I don't like chemistry. But I did really like that school because the people that like being in a lab are people that I like. They're dorks.
Yeah.
And the first day in that school, someone was like, "Oh, my name is blah, 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 and I like playing Dungeons and Dragons." Like, that guy, I'm going to be his friend. So after that presentation was done, and we went to like, it's not recess at that point, but like whatever, there's a break and people get lunch. I was like, "So, you like to play Dungeons and Dragons, huh?" And he was like, "Oh, I'm getting bullied." I'm like, no, I want to play. So I played with him, and he dumped his playing group because they were immature, and we did our own thing, and we started playing Dungeons and Dragons, Vampire more, and we transitioned into Hunter because that's what I really liked, and we played together for years until that broke up, and I started replacing them with other people, and then loads of stuff.
It's amazing how RPGs are a way to find people. Right, that you would otherwise not be able to find. You can only
figure out who plays.
Yep.
You got it made.
I have a question for you. 2 questions. And where is it? So the first one is, I'm looking for my O's. Those are P's, which means my O's are probably over here. They are. Why do you like orcs?
I don't really know. Like, there's that bit about humans are dull because everyone's a human. And you only have a few, like, of the basic races. You've got your elves, you've got your dwarves, the rest doesn't matter, and you've got humans and orcs. That's what I saw in media. And I read Lord of the Rings, but reading Lord of the Rings isn't going to make you excited about orcs, because orcs in Lord of the Rings are horrible. They're so boring.
Yeah.
But I'm not an elf guy, because I like huge things that beat things, and dwarves are tiny, so that makes them pretty cool. But what if they were bigger?
wait, how do you feel about Warforged?
That's a tricky question, because they're more tech based. So if they exist, that automatically raises the tech level of the campaign that you're in. Even if the tech was old,
right?
Means you're going to stumble on more old tech.
Unless it's all magic based, right? Because it could all be just sort of alchemical whatnots. I
guess. I mean, they would still mechanically work because their legs have to bend.
Yeah.
That's not exactly easy. So they inform the setting a lot. I find I do like them. If I use Warforged, they sound like this.
Nice. Hey, Cyclonus.
And they're really emotional because they're brand new.
Oh, I like that take on Warforged.
Yes.
Orcs are drunk.
They're just a pure soul that just got stolen.
Oh.
Because that's also my take. When you create a Warforged, that's this, you got your metal body, and then they're like, all right, well, it has to be alive, so you need a soul from somewhere. And then you do your ritual, and you pull your soul from the place that souls come from. And you stick it in there, and it works, and you're like, yay. But that soul was supposed to go somewhere, and now it didn't. So I have, at the moment of creation of a Warforged, there's a baby born without a soul who grows up to be an axe murderer.
That's cool.
Or whatever. I love that. I love the fact that as a Warforged, you're responsible for a horrible person being born.
Well, maybe not you personally, your maker, perhaps.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you know this game, because I feel like maybe if you don't know it, you should know it. Do you know Orc World?
I do not.
It's by John Wick, who and Tom
I know
Stewart.
him. I've seen his movies.
Different John Wick. Other John Wick. John Wick, who did Seventh Sea and House of the Blooded and did some things here or there. But this is a game that he wrote. You know, because he was. I think he was. This is actually kind of old now. Like me. Don't worry about it. No, this is from 2000, right? So this is right before the indie game. So like basically John Wick was doing some indie games before the indie game thing sort of really hit big, but he was really interested in trying to sort of think about different ways of doing what RPGs could be. And yeah, he did Legends of Five Rings and Seventh Sea, and this is basically a game where you are part of a tribe of orcs. Like you sort of create a whole household in the tribe and you make your orcs, and you have to try to keep yourself and your community safe from these terrible like humans, dwarves, and elves who keep coming in and trying to kill you all for kind of no reason. And so it's like a flip of D&D where rather than like orcs rampaging and killing people, instead you're the orcs who are trying to...
That's just part of their culture.
Who are trying
you
to
have to let people be themselves, you know? The orcs don't bother the dwarves when they're digging in the dirt. Why do you have to be so obnoxious about when we come and raid? Like, that's just what we do. It's a coming of age thing.
And so like there's like a whole like orc myth cycle, and maybe you'd be interested in it since you like orcs. So
I do like my orcs.
Want to give you that recommendation. There we go. Put that. So just you can probably get it, in all those places.
So thinking about a little more in the background, in Warcraft 1, the basic units of the two races, humans and orcs, a human foot soldier is like covered head to toe in plate, and an orc warrior, you don't even see his armor. He doesn't have a shield, which I think the human does. So that's something that makes the orc more impressive. Like he's just a natural fighter. Like he doesn't need as much help. He's a little tougher, I think. And since it's a war game, I like that a lot. Also, I really like the spearmen the orcs had, because ranged unit, you automatically assume it's going to be like an archer or a crossbowman, and they had guys that threw spears, and I thought that's new. I like that.
So now I have a question. I want to know. Tell me how you found your way into Twitch. Like in like the circles that I run in, you're such a strong part of the communities that I run around in, right? And so tell me how you found your way into Twitch.
How did I find my way into Twitch?
Yeah.
I'm a huge dork, so I watched The Guild.
Yeah.
No idea how I stumbled across The Guild, but I did.
I think for me it was because I'd heard that basically this is like, because what you're going to say is like, I feel like my same story, that I was watching The Guild, and I think I found The Guild because one, she was in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and they're like, oh,
Nope, that's something I found out afterwards.
Yeah.
Like, she was in Buffy? That's cool.
No, for me it was like, oh, there's this woman who was in Buffy who's doing a thing that's about like World of Warcraft, and I was like, oh, I'll go watch it, right? And so it was like World of Warcraft and Buffy, and I was like, oh, and that's how I found it.
Like maybe some of my friends shared The Guild because they were into World of Warcraft, and I at the start said, you can't win this game? I don't know, that sounds like a fad. I'm just gonna wait it out for a month and you guys will be done, and then we can play something else. That never happened.
And then you
basically still waiting for everybody to get done with World of Warcraft.
You'll never get done.
No.
Never get done. All right, so you find the Guild.
Yeah, I find the Guild, and the Guild is eventually done and starts to move on into Geek and Sundry, which I, of course, subscribe to on YouTube, because who knows what she's going to do. I see some fun stuff, and then I see Critical Role, and I get really... I've been playing RPGs for like most of my life at that point. I'm like, let's see what these actors can do. Like, I'm sure they're going to mess up all the rules and like make really stupid decisions. So I was there basically imagining that I would laugh at them, but with an open mind.
Yeah.
I had an open mind about what they were going to do. So I watched the first episode and was like, this is actually pretty good.
Yeah.
And then as it went on, I was like, this is actually really good. That dude over there in the chair, the GM, he's awesome. I wish I had him as a GM. And then as it went on, I got more and more hyped until basically like my whole life became a shrine to Critical Role. And that was the only thing I had going on at the moment, because I just like gotten done with working, and I was like, okay, no, not going to do that. What am I going to fill my time with? Here's a huge, long-ass show, which I'm a lot of episodes behind on, because by the time it hit YouTube, like there were like 9, 12 episodes or something, and they were long, so that's a lot of catching up.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do this. This sounds like a great way to spend my time. And when I was caught up, basically my whole life was waiting for the next episode and spending the time in between, like listening to the Critical Role podcasts, like Critical Reroll, and connecting with other critters on Twitter and such. And that was awesome. And then I was like, okay, this is fun, but waiting a whole week for an episode of Critical Role, that's real long. So I'm sure there's more stuff like this on Twitch or like the internet in general. And I couldn't really find anything that was quite at that level.
Yeah.
But there was other stuff. And eventually that's how I stumbled onto Lauren and company.
Through Hyper, right? And then from Hyper out.
Gaia, who was the mod for Critical Role, who I would also always see in chat, because at the start, I would wake up at 4 a.m. to watch Critical Role. And be there like, hype! So hyped, in fact, that I could not sleep if it was Thursday. I'd be like, all right, I'm going to catch sleep until 4 a.m. Then I'm going to wake up and I'll be like, I'm so excited. Oh, it's 4 a.m. Guess I'm getting up.
Barantor asks, did you ever try the Warcraft RPG that was based on 3rd edition?
I did not. Like, the Warcraft world is great, so I would probably have liked that.
Not Warcraft. Hammer.
I see Warcraft.
Oh, I do see Warcraft. Oh. Barantor, do you mean Warcraft or Warhammer?
Also like Warhammer.
That's
what I spent my teen years doing.
So.
But 40K.
40K. So actually, so tell me about sort of moving into modding, and no, Warcraft has an RPG based on the OGL. I never played the Warcraft RPG. I wonder if it's good.
If it's based off of 3E, the system, no.
Some people. I played 3E. I mean,
I played 3E too, and I'm glad I'm not done.
I only played the odd editions of D&D for some reason. Don't ask. 1, 3, and 5. I don't know. So no, tell me how you get into modding and what that means for you.
Well, so Gaia said to all the critters, please go watch this girl's stream. I was like, I like Gaia. I'll do her the solid. Why not? I'll support this woman streaming. So I come into Lauren's stream, and the first thing I see is her banning someone for saying something that I, until that point, considered just normal internet behavior. I was like, whoa, this woman is for real. Like, she isn't kidding around. So I was immediately impressed with her. And so I stuck around. I learned what a huge dork she is. That impressed me. And I asked her like a fuck ton of questions. Like, do you know this nerdy thing? Yes. Wow. How about this one? Yes. Oh. And I stuck around forever. It was like, because the mood in the Legion was like really positive and friendly and educational as well. I really liked that. So I just stuck around, and I was excited to be there. I was excited for streams to happen and for everything. And eventually, a lot of time of me being an enthusiastic member of chat, Lauren was like, hey, I need another mod. How about you? I was like, the pressure. And I immediately felt myself like completely crushed under the whole thing, because I don't like me some pressure. I said, I don't know how good I'm going to be at this, but I guess if I see like a troll pop up in chat, I can ban him, because that's not that hard.
With a hammer?
Yeah, like I know what a troll looks like.
Was it your years playing Dungeons and Dragons that
It was, yeah. They're ugly. They ask a bunch of questions at bridges.
They're always at bridges. Why?
Mhm.
Why?
You know the troll Riddler?
Yes, who's under the bridge, right? And you have to answer 3 questions?
No, the troll Riddler is like a meme thing, which I love. All right. The party approaches a bridge, and there's a sign that says the troll Riddler, and like there's this huge troll. He has this giant club on his head and his shoulder. And the troll says to the party, "Send forth best Riddler." And the party looks among themselves, and it's like, all right. So the bard steps forward. "I'm the best Riddler." And the troll instantly just smushes the bard into like, because "I hate Riddlers." I love that.
Oh, poor troll. Poor troll. Sal wants to know, wait, ugly?
Ask me riddles.
Asking questions at bridges. Am I a troll? Sal, you're not ugly, so no. I mean, I don't know if you hang out at bridges late at night asking questions. I can't answer that one. That's not a thing.
That's the worst way to spend the time.
This is fair. This is fair. So now, what does what now? You are now.
I just imagine someone actually doing that, standing at the foot of a bridge. "Answer me these riddles 3."
See,
dude, I'm just trying to get home.
I always imagine them like in a trench coat and a fedora, being like, "Psst, hey, bud, come here," and you're like,
"You want a riddle?
You want a riddle? What? What walks on 4 legs in the morning, but then walks on 2 in the afternoon, but then 3 in the evening? What am I?" You're like, "Oh,
I'm a mutant." I do know the answer to that one because it's like the most common.
Right, it's the most common
ever.
one. Yeah. And what's the other one? Like, there's one that's like about like, I babble but I don't talk. I rush but I don't walk.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and you're like, "You're a river, it's fine."
Yeah. I got a lot of good ones from Baldur's Gate because there's this trap room that's nothing but riddles, which I loved.
Yeah, Falcon, all of my, like, whenever I think about people like on bridges, for always gangsters in the 1920s, I don't know why. It's like there's always, and Mr. Awful McPerson's like, that could be interpreted as cruising. Could be. Maybe trolls like to cruise. I don't know. A box without hinges, a key without a lid, but golden treasure inside is hid. What am I? That's another good one. Like the egg one, the river one. There's a wind one that's really good. I think there's a wine one that's good.
Oh, it's an egg.
Yeah. Crit Twitch is like, "I'm not much of a riddle person, so I'd be doomed." Can I run a mob game? Falcon of them.
Heck yeah.
Yes. And weird, like, side note, I have been doing research for a mob game. It is like you cannot see this.
Cthulhu Confidential was full of mobsters.
Oh yeah, but like a full-on just like noir mob game. Like I've gotten there are a couple game systems that are like specific to a noir, and I've been reading newspapers from the New York Times from the 1920s. I'm just saying that yes.
I only freelance as a mobster.
I don't only freelance. So now tell me, now you are now modding for a couple of communities, right? Like 3 or 4? 2?
The Legion, Chelsea's community, which is great. Geek Space, which is over.
Yeah.
And that's basically it, because, well, I'm still a mod in Drunkly's Discord, but since he's not streaming anymore, that's over.
But he might come back. Once everything...
They did just move into a new house.
They
you never know.
So tell me what, because you've, like, modding takes time, and you do not live in the same time zone as the people that you mod for the most...
This is true.
For the most part. So what does modding mean to you? What do you, like, what are your philosophies on it? Like, why do you mod?
Well, what it means to me is that I have something to do, which is really great, because that's the main source of my depression, is that my depression tells me that I'm useless and add no value to the world. And then being a mod tells me, no, that's not it. That's not correct, because I do stuff to help people. Like, I'm in this community. I do this modding thing. And just last week, I smote this horrible troll that was saying all kinds of weird stuff.
Inappropriately. Like, why are you saying stuff? Stop it. Cut it out.
No one talks with me.
Death to all trolls, Paladin style. So I suppose I would like to know, because we talked a little bit about depression and autism, and I know that Lauren Random Tuesdays really sort of, she's one of the ambassadors for what are they called now? You know,
I do know.
You do know.
Yeah, I took like a training seminar thing from them.
Yeah, they did a really cool training seminar. And their name is something. Nope.
Chat, help.
Chat, come on! It's not Extra Life. It's
Fudge it. I'll just Google it.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. All I hear in my brain is Extra Life.
I know this is really bad. I'm like, Extra Life. Nope. Take This?
Yeah, that's it. That's the one. Take This.
Yes. That are sort of thinking about mental health and gaming and the ways in which, and then also, there are other people who are sort of thinking about, I can't remember her name either. She was GMing once over on the Geek Space, but she's the psychologist.
Yeah. Dr. Megan Connell.
That's right. And so who
I also did a thing with. She interviewed me once for like a segment of her psychology at the table thing.
Oh, very cool. So
that was really cool.
Tell me more about that. What did you talk about?
That was right around the time she did that GMing thing on Geek Space, and she asked in the chat, "Hey, I'm looking for this type of segment. Is there anyone who has an experience similar to that?" And since I'm always right here looking at Discord, I was the first to respond. It's like, I have something like this. Is that what you want? Like, that's perfect. We'll schedule it. I'm like, oh, I didn't know I was immediately signing up, but okay, I'm down for this. I can work through all the anxiety. Work with a psychologist who I considered to be huge at the time.
Hello, NRW. So what did you all talk about? Because this was was it streamed?
Yeah. She had a segment about how to talk to your players about more difficult subjects, about things going wrong. And I brought in the subject that a while back I was playing with my cousin, who is not the easiest person in the world. And I had joined a group via him, which is another fun story, but we'll get to that. And we usually had campaigns planned out 2 in advance or something, because everyone had stuff that they wanted to run. And what he really wanted to play was Shadowrun, which the rest of us were more about. But he was all about Shadowrun. He had his silver-plated katanas and his sniper rifle all ready, and he was ready to be a completely dull killing machine. So that's him. And while we were playing the campaign before that, just a normal D&D campaign, I forget what it was exactly, he would constantly remind us hey, I'm only here to wait until Shadowrun. So if we all die, that's fine. That's just, easier to get to Shadowrun.
Wow.
So it's all good. I don't care.
Wow.
And that kind of really sucked the fun out of that campaign.
Yeah.
So I brought that in as an example from how should I breach this with him? The situation had resolved because the GM was like, if you don't like it, then fuck off.
Yeah.
After a couple of sessions of that, he exploded on the little guy.
Because that's rude.
I didn't.
That was rude. That's not nice. Come on.
It really wasn't. But we worked through that, and we had this great interview, which went perfectly. I was funny, she was funny, it clicked, and then it turned out we hadn't been recording audio, so we had to do the interview again.
Oh no!
Which was a little more awkward.
Yeah.
But it still worked out.
Oof. Oh, that's bummer. Mm-hmm. So I was, it's interesting because I was thinking about how a lot of people in the Discord communities where we hang have, they might have depression or anxiety or autism or all sorts of things, right? There are all sorts of there's a lot of neurodiversity in our communities. And do you think that's something that is specific to the Twitch version of gaming communities in general? What are your thoughts about the relationship between neurodiversity and gaming?
I think we have a community where we're able to be open about all the stuff that's wrong with us. and in more conventional settings, that's not really talked about as much. Like autism is so common these days that it might come up, but I still run across people who are like, I might be autistic and my wife wants me to get a diagnosis, but I'm like, I don't know. That sounds like a hassle. I don't want that label. I'm fine. I don't need anything. So,
yeah, but
I'm happy we are where we are, where everyone's like, fuck yeah, I have depression.
So that then you can actually get help.
Right there, it's on fire.
There's like, right, you know, and I think about not finding out what's going on does not help you.
Yes.
Right? Like having, I think people, I mean, I was talking to a student who clearly had a learning disability. And I was like, have you spoken to anyone about this? And they were like, no, but I don't need to think about it. I was like, no, you should, because if you have a learning disability, you can get accommodations. But to find out what accommodations would be best for you, you'd probably talk to someone. You don't have to struggle, right? And there's nothing wrong with getting accommodations at all. Getting accommodations is great, but you have to talk to somebody, because maybe it's dyslexia. Maybe like they're all, you know, there are things that could be done. But if you,
I really needed them. Like in school, my first year of law school, like I was there's 4 quarters in the year. At the first quarter, I crushed. I was getting like top grades and everything was getting done. But I don't do well under pressure, so I couldn't keep that up for the whole year. So the second quarter was pretty decent, and the third quarter was like, I barely made it to the end of that quarter with everything like half-assed.
Yeah.
And then there was a fourth quarter, and that thing killed me.
Oh, 4 quarters without a break.
Well, I'm sure there were vacations in there, but that's not enough for me to really reset. I need a summer vacation to get my shit together.
But that's like 4 quarters without a summer vacation.
Yeah.
That's rough. That is rough.
I mean, that's normal, but we get tons of vacations, remember? I'm in Europe.
but like, UCLA's in the quarter system, but it's only 3 quarters before you have a break. So like you having 4 like that just sounds really rough.
I don't know, it's normal here, but I couldn't do that. Yeah. But since I had my label, I could go to school and say, hey, this is rough for me.
Yeah.
Is there anything we could do? And I assumed they'd say no, you know, this is the school. Like, if you get the degree, you have to be able to do this. That's what I assumed they'd say, but they didn't. They'd say, oh, okay, we don't care. Do them a little spread out, whatever. Like, I could do that? That's awesome. So I took all the classes just a little more spread out, so easier to manage.
So now this is law school. Now, so we've got lab work, law school, teaching,
I had no idea what I was good at and what I wanted to do.
What all the things that you have done?
I've done a lot, yeah. So at the end of high school, I asked my girlfriend at the time what I should do, and she had no idea, and I had no idea. And all I knew that I really liked, I dreaded going to work in an office because my mom worked in an office and she did not like it. She came home constantly with complaints. Like, well, gotta dodge that. That doesn't sound like fun. And my dad is pretty much a workaholic. Like, he's all about the job. And that also didn't sound like fun. What did sound like fun is playing with kids all day. And I love kids. Kids are awesome. Kids talk just like I do, very direct, because that's the autistic way. And kids are basically autistic. Like, they don't have the empathy skills either. So that's just a breath of fresh air to talk to children. So I thought, I'm going to just be a teacher. Easy peasy. So I go to teaching school to become an elementary school teacher. And ye gods, that was a horrible place to be.
Oh.
Everyone was super judgmental towards everybody else. Not just me, everyone.
Oh.
It was horrible. Like, whatever like way you had about doing the job, whatever opinions you had, if you uttered them, someone would say, that makes you a bad teacher.
Oh my gosh.
Like, you think gym is important? That means you suck. Like, I had the opinion, I don't like children's songs, like those really basic, repetitive things, And I said, I don't want to do that. Can't we just start them off with real music, like the normal kind that I also like?
Right.
They're like, that makes you a terrible teacher. You shouldn't be a teacher.
Oh
that
my
kind
gosh.
of opinion.
Were they in a lot of did they have a lot of insecurities on their own situation?
Probably. I also had an opinion where I wanted to teach the older classes, like right up till high school, because I felt like I could have more interesting conversations with the kids. Because before that, people were like, "Did you poop your pants?" No, good. And they said that would make me a bad teacher. Like, they're perfectly developed whole human beings when they're little, and I'm like, yeah, but. That's not even so.
If they were hold on. If they're perfectly developed whole human beings, that seems developmentally not true.
I mean, they're not completely done developing, but no. Is anyone ever?
Ever? No. Well, apparently you finish everything when you're 25, which I don't believe that at all. I'm gonna.
No, you keep learning and growing as a like not physically, but.
Right.
I mean, falling apart is a kind of growing.
Yeah. I think that we grow every time we meet a new person, and every time we encounter something different. That is, every time we have something new, there's some sort of growth. And everything is always new, right? Like, even if you do the same thing twice, it's not the same thing the second time you do it. So I think that we're always growing all the time. Sea Spider says, they're fully formed, they just don't have the range. I mean, have you seen them try to throw things? They don't have the range.
Kids are not great at throwing stuff.
Also, hey, Ice Bunny, how are you doing?
Should you be awake, Ice Bunny?
No, it is a question that we should ask.
It's 2 a.m.
Crit Twitch says, I hate new things about my work every day. That is fair. That thing you like says...
Now I also hate that coaster.
I hate that
coaster. It's making my life miserable.
I mean, you constantly learn new things regardless of age. Even on your deathbed, you learn what it's like to be on your deathbed. That is true.
I don't care for this experience.
I don't like it. PH, so I feel like this is true. I feel like the Dutch are all really good in English.
A lot of us, yeah.
It's like more so than other countries.
I'm part of a generation that is sort of especially halfway decent at it because all our cartoons when we were little were in English. All of them.
Really?
There were some, but like most of the cartoons that we kids watched were in English. But now they're starting to get dubbed more.
Really?
Yeah. So it's easier to dodge the entire English language.
Huh. Because it's interesting because in Germany, there are like lots of Germans who did not speak English. Lots of Germans speak English really well.
Because all their media is dubbed, which is horrible.
Like it's all dubbed.
If I ever rise to power, that's the first thing that changes.
Just like change.
Not starting at inequality and everything. That.
the dubbing, like you know.
Yeah, the dubbing. That's my real pet peeve.
It's like just a lot of dubbing, and then also just a lot of German language media. Like they have like a film industry that's pretty robust.
Oh yeah, and they do great TV as well. Yeah. Like their murder mystery shows are the best.
So good. Like I would watch
at least until Scandinavia started to catch up in the.
Oh. Yeah, the Scandinavians have been come up with a lot of really good stuff recently. Actually, that
every time I talk to my mom, I'm like, I'm watching this Swedish show. I'm like, is it about murder? Yes, it is. How did you know? Because all the shows you watch are about murder.
You know, actually, so I'm wondering about the Netherlands and their media industry, right? So I'm thinking about France has got some RPGs, and also they've got a film and they've got a media industry more sort of writ large. Same thing.
We do. Endable is a global business, and we do pretty well with musicals. So that's nice. We have a lot of TV shows that get adapted overseas as well. And we do our own versions of some American TV shows. Like Big Brother is Dutch. So.
Oh, is it originally Dutch?
Yeah.
Interesting. Now, how many languages are spoken in the Netherlands? You have a couple, right?
We have 2, Dutch and Fries. Fries is only spoken in the top province, Friesland.
What is that language like? Is it a Germanic language?
Yes, but it sounds really weird. It's very different. Like, I can't understand it. I don't speak it. It's just, okay, sure. Do you also speak in the Dutch?
And they're like, no. And you're like, okay.
Oh, fuck.
So,
You know, you're legally obligated.
really?
No, like not as a general person, but like the government offices, they have to speak Dutch. But the ones in Friesland can also speak Fries.
Huh. So you live in Europe, like some other people in our chat right now. I'm not going to name names.
Y'all should be in bed, except everyone who thinks it's too hot, because you are super right. It is too hot.
That is true. How do you survive? I mean, I'm living with my time zone basically living Pacific Coast when I live on the East Coast, which is a little awkward, but like it's not nearly as awkward as it must be for you all. For you and also the folks in chat who are living in Central European time. How do you deal with this time zone excitement?
Yeah, it's hard sometimes. Like the things that I have to miss, you know, because I'm asleep.
Yeah.
Like that sucks. But like an RPG show, like the chat interaction isn't really there. So I don't like, besides like the general camaraderie, I don't miss anything by watching the VOD.
Yeah.
And it's even easier because I can pause the VOD to go do other stuff. Like I don't have to panic because I'm going to the bathroom and be like, I don't want to miss anything. Grog die?
What? Everyone's dead? No. And Ice Bunny says insomnia helps.
Insomnia doesn't help. I don't have it.
Yeah. Oh, but no. That thing you like says my D&D sessions start at 1 a.m., which sucks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think because you're also now playing, right? You're now doing.
Maggie's game starts at 4 a.m.
How is that for you?
It's not ideal, but considering that that's the only time these days that I wake up at 4 a.m. unless something else pops up, it's fine. Like once a week, sure. Like that's the next day is just gone.
Yeah.
But it's fine. And it's more than worth it considering I really like that game.
So this is so no, that thing you like says, but you get to enjoy D&D, so it's okay.
Exactly. Like you make sacrifices for the things you love.
Now tell me about this, because now when I was hearing about, and I know you've had this long history of playing, but when I was hearing about you sort of playing on Twitch, it's been through this charity game, and you were playing you made a wizard who was made to be hated.
Was not he was a sorcerer.
Sorcerer.
That's even more privileged than being a wizard. So I made him to be the epitome of privilege, because I needed him to be a horrible person, because he needed to get punished by chat with donations, because that's how the donation system worked. Because I looked at that in advance, you know, because the opportunity presented itself, because everyone gets to play in Maggie's community. You just have to be a sub. And I was like, oh, I get to play with Maggie. Like people on Roll For It pay $200 for that privilege. So, and I'm gonna get it for $5. I see that deal, and I'm Dutch, and we know all about like that sort of stuff. So I was like, well, what's this game about? And I noticed that the donations that were coming in that game for charity were mostly negative consequences for the players, the play characters, I should say. So I figured, okay, how can I work with that to make a character that's going to really get people excited to donate, to like bring him down a peg? And so I'm going to make Captain Privilege, like the most privileged douche canoe that I can think of. So I made him an elf because they're naturally arrogant. Yeah. I made him a high elf because as elves go, they're the most arrogant. And I made him a sorcerer because you can get more. He was born with superpowers. That's really, really privileged. Yeah. And then I decided I was also going to make him a druid because he thought it was unfair that he didn't have the ability to cast healing magic. How can I, a noble, not have access to such power? This is clearly unfair. So I shall infiltrate this little druid circle and learn their peculiar little dirt diggings. I can do that too. So how much did you help earn through your character? A lot.
Tover, right?
was very successful as a character in that game. He immediately got just totally hammered with wild magic before he even did anything. Just being described sitting in his luxurious carriage with his flowing robes. And like the earth opened up and swallowed all his possessions. Then his clothes caught fire, his leg fell off. And so he hobbled naked into town. And that was like the first 15 minutes of that character showing up. And it's like, how am I going to work with this? Because he doesn't have anything. Like, I could just do the horror of losing a limb and all this stuff. But I decided, like, that's not going to work. So I have to play him as just being fine with it, being totally confident that it'll all work out in the end, because it always does. So I just soldiered through, and the donations kept coming. Like, and some he dodged by getting them dispelled because his skin started to crack, and like that's a bridge too far. Like, he can lose a limb, but being ugly, no,
he couldn't do that. No.
Yeah, no. He learned a spell specifically to hide that, like an illusion, which he would normally never learn, because why would he turn himself into something else when he's already perfect?
He sounds the best.
So fun to play.
He sounds the best.
So fun. Like because I was the first elf to like high elf, so I was able to work with Maggie to develop their whole culture, which peak privilege. And I loved doing that. They were such horrible people. Like, I played him like in a colonialist way, that he came to this human town and was like, this is not very good. Let's improve on it. Like, I'm sure I could get some elves down here to do some proper and indoor plumbing, because everyone needs that.
Oh my goodness. I love him. He seems the worst.
He is the worst. But he's not like a terrible human being.
Yeah.
Because he's an elf. But no, like he is kind and helpful, and he has good intentions. It's just because of his incredibly privileged upbringing, he doesn't realize that not everyone agrees that elves are clearly superior.
Even though for him, of course, clearly they are.
Obviously they are. You can just look at them and see.
And also, of course, I mean, he wants to help people out, understand
by making them more elven.
To make them more elven. B. Wright was saying earlier that he finds it easier to stay up for a thing for a thing rather than get up early. And as a fellow night owl, B. Wright, yes, I find it much easier to stay up than it is to get up. But yeah.
It is tough at times, because I know there's the pressure. Okay, I have to sleep now because I have to get up at 4 a.m.
Yeah.
And then sometimes it doesn't work.
Yeah.
I'm too excited. I'm too nervous. Like, I have this scene planned or something. Or I re-rehearsed my introduction speech, which I like doing.
What is the charity? Is it a different one each time?
The charity is St. Jude Children's Hospital, the super hospital for sick kids who take care of their every need, which is amazing. Because
unlike the Netherlands, we don't really have good healthcare systems. Yeah. I mean, we have good hospitals. We just don't have. It costs money.
Great doctors, which nobody can afford.
Yeah. Under pressure. It's easier to stay up than to get up. That thing you like? You're right. I'm gonna have to add that as a quote. That is true. I hope that it's okay that I use the country portion of your name, see Spider Mex. Feels a little weird after I did that, but I'm lazy sometimes. Oh no! So now I actually had a question that I was wondering about.
Was it about my new character for Maggie's game?
Yes.
I can talk about him too.
Who is your new character? And I had another question too.
Oh. Well, we've started season 2 now. We're like several episodes in, and Tover was really well liked by the community, even though he was horrible. Like, everyone did like him, and in a love to hate way. So, and I got stuck being like, okay, I have to top this now, and I immediately knew that was impossible. I could never do that, but I still needed a character to draw donations, and the only way to do it was to make him terrible so that he would do that. And I could not think of any character that would be better at it than Tover. So I got stuck. Like every time I would come up with a concept, it'd be too horrible. Like I wouldn't enjoy playing it, or it would just be a different version of him. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do something completely different. I'm going to try to get them to be nice. Like that chat room isn't used to that, but there are options for giving positive donations. So I'm going to try to get them to do that. And I made Mortimer Jones. I used to solve mysteries with my wife. Yes. And I don't really remember what's going on half the time. But we're excited to go on, even though we're really old and we should really be inside eating pudding. He's really sad. He's a sad old man whose glory days are long behind him. And like his wife left him ages ago, and he's still like totally focused on his wife and keeps misremembering that she's still there. And, like he asks her for help, and that doesn't come because she left him 30 years ago at the least. And my plan to get them to be nice and donate failed horribly because that's not what they do.
No.
Instead, I get avoided when all the horrible stuff happens. They try to steer those away from me because everyone, we can't hurt him. He's already basically dead.
I hope we can get some positive donations in there for Mortimer.
But again, everyone does really like the character, so that's nice.
Actually, I had a question that I wanted to ask. It was just, it occurred to me. So, you have autism.
I do.
Which means you have like a different sort of viewpoint in the world than like some neurotypical person.
So I'm told.
Do you think that gives you any kind of, do you think there's something, how does that experience impact your gaming life? Like, do you think you're like, oh, like I can sort of, like there's something that like, like, for example, various experiences I've had in my life sometimes impact my gaming in ways that I think is actually really cool. That I've had like, this is a thing that like, I have this sort of empathy, or I have this experience that I can draw in different ways. And I'm glad that I have that. Do you think that you have anything, in what ways do you think that it impacts your gaming life in ways that people may not expect?
The positives are going to be difficult to notice. Like, there's stuff I'm good at, like riddles, because I can easily associate all those different words together, which is not normal, I think, for autistic people. But I'm a weird one. I'm not like the sticker on the box that says that's what we are. I'm way more social than the average one, because I've always really noticed that I was different and not been okay with that. I was like, no, I got to figure out how to be better at this, how to fit in more, because I can see how other people do it. I should be able to figure that out. These people are not geniuses, so if they can do it, I can do it.
Right.
But it's not that easy, because I am lacking an actual thing that I can't do. I can just like fake it, or like do it in like around a bend or something intellectually, which is hard.
And tell me more about that, because I don't know if everybody understands. I think that when you look at media portrayals of autism, it's usually
don't do that. Do not look at media portrayals of autistic people, because they are awful.
They're not good, right?
On the whole.
They're probably not going to give
Sheldon Cooper can go jump off a building.
Yeah.
Because he's fake, and I can say that. I can tell Sheldon Cooper to do that, because he's not a real person. Don't tell real people to do that.
And like, I mean, my understanding, I think the first depiction of autism that I saw,
Data? Mr. Spock. Is it Mr. Spock?
No, the boy who, I mean, as in overtly said, this is an autistic person, right?
Oh, yeah.
Was The Boy Who Could Fly, which was a movie about a boy who was autistic and never said anything, but then could fly at the end of the movie.
I can't fly, Trooper. I'm sorry to disappoint.
But from the movies, I learned that superpowers. So, I mean, I think a lot of people may not have a really good sense of the variety.
It's difficult because we're all different. like we have different difficulty putting ourselves in other people's shoes. That's like the main one that we really struggle with, and you have to like be aware of that and cut us some slack, because we're trying, everybody. We are really giving it our all, but it's not something that comes naturally, so I have to do it intellectually. I can't just have the superpower of empathy. I have to do it like with purpose,
with some elbow grease.
Yeah.
Do you think that gaming helps with the process, or do you think they're more?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Gaming is a fantastic opportunity for autistic people to do socializing, because there are rules. Everything is really clear about what's expected of you, and like there's no weird surprises, because it's all right there. Like what you're supposed to do, how you're supposed to do it. Like you can, like there's a system, you can figure that system out and do it the best way. And the rest, all the things beyond the game, the normal socializing, like everyone brings, some candy or whatever. That's that stuff you pick up along the way, and that people talk before the game starts and be like, how was your day? And then learn from, maybe I should start asking people how their day was, because that's not something that we do normally, because that's not in our radar to do that. We're here to play the game. That's what we're focused on.
Although I've been in groups that do not ask how your day went, because they're like, we don't have that much time, we gotta go.
It all makes sense, but like those are all normal social things that you pick up on that people do, and every once in a while you're like, fuck, I forgot to do that thing. Or I'm now really in the moment asking you about how your day was, because that's on the checklist of correct social behavior. Like, now that that's over with, we can get to the good stuff.
So here, this is an interesting thing. I see this debate, and I've always been like, about it. And it was this idea, and this is a Dungeons and Dragons thing, but it has large implications. People will say, Dungeons and Dragons doesn't really do anything particularly well but combat. That's like where the main bulk of its emphasis is sort of focused. D&D 5 has added more things, but generally speaking, that like everybody who's a PC is a combatant, and they all, like all of them are combatants. Like you cannot really make a D&D character who's not a combatant, because they all have combat skills. Like it's right.
You can make an NPC villager.
You could, but that would be an NPC.
You could still make one.
It's true. But then your fellow players might be mad at you because it throws off the challenge.
Oh yeah, I had that. I was just like getting done with Vampire, being that kind of a GM. So I was very much not like dealing with combat at all. And then I had to do D&D again, and like the stories I was told was all combat. So I was like, I'm going to show these guys. I'm going to make a whole session with no combat at all. Like I'm going to have a monster show up, and just when they're getting ready to roll initiative, the monster runs away. They did not like that.
Yeah. But here's
which makes sense afterwards.
Right.
I was like, oh, that's not what they came to do.
Right.
Yeah.
But what was interesting is that when people say this, people make this comment about D&D being mostly focused on combat, and then somebody will always say, well, but you don't need rules for non-combat things, right? As a matter of fact, you shouldn't have rules for talking or social things, because you just RP that. Like you don't need rules for that. And like the idea being that like really you shouldn't have rules for that. You just role play it. You just role play the talking, and that's the way to do it. And that never seemed right to me.
It's not. Like, for example, if my cousin were to play a character with high charisma and were to then role play that would not go as he wanted it to go, because he doesn't have high charisma. So he needs a dice roll to back him up and say, no, this complete gibberish that he just spouted actually was super charismatic and convinced this merchant that he should totally have a discount.
Yeah.
Also, like, give him his daughter's hand in marriage or whatever he wanted.
And Krellin sort of says, not having rules for non-combat things mean that people can't play characters good at non-combat things they're not personally good at.
Exactly.
Yeah, and C Spider says, I find it difficult to play a strong character. I find it as difficult to play a strong character as a charismatic one.
Physically strong? Why? That seems fairly easy.
Well, maybe it's about I wonder if it's about like I think that I know some people who have a hard time playing tactical characters if they're not like tactical combat characters if they're not personally tactically combatant.
That makes sense.
Levi says, "Now we just do the combat, so let's see how hard you can swing this hammer." And like nobody makes people actually hit people at a tabletop RPG. Maybe at a LARP, but even then you probably should not be really hurting people on that LARP because right.
Because I was in a 4th edition campaign where we had one out of the whole group who was not tactically gifted, and we kept going like, really, that's what you're doing? Fine, we'll make it work. Like we'll cover you while you senselessly run ahead.
And I remember like GURPS has a tactics skill. And I remember we were in some sort of situation and somebody was like was playing a leader type PC and had the tactics skill, and there was like some kind of combat thing going to go down, and they had some time to plan, and the player did not have any kind of tactics whatsoever, and was just like, "Can I just roll tactics?" And I was like, "Of course you can. Just roll tactics." And they rolled tactics, and I was like, "Okay." And then like we as a group were able to come up with, and this is why I'm not like as metagaming, right? Like this person had like a really high tactics score, rolled really, really well. And so for me, it was totally fine for us as a group sort of like to sort of figure out how their brilliant tactics manifested, right? And even if you're not charismatic, I'm super cool with like, okay, tell me what you want, what you really, really want. You want to come up with a story that will convince them what? Okay, and then we can work that out. Because I don't feel like people should be punished for not being their character, right? Krellin says, as someone who is stronger than they look, I do restrain myself from things less strong people don't. Like, I don't give friends friendly slaps or punches. Oh, that's true, right? I think if you don't, you may not understand certain ways.
Yeah, I have to be careful about where I step and how I turn around because I'm huge. And I tend to be in the way, which I always feel. I always feel like I'm in the way, even when I'm not.
Mr. Awful McPerson says, as an Eastern European person, when I GM, I need to make my players roll for certain things because of references and influences not common in Anglo-American storytelling and culture. Oh, that makes a lot of sense, right? I think that so much of the stories are certain kind of tropes that you grow up with, right? And if you are playing in a narrative tradition that is not yours, you may not get that, like, oh, right? Like if like when I was watching a Russian TV show about the Night Witches that was a Russian TV show about the Night Witches, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so rough. Like, this is so punishing. Like, I could never, I mean, the RPG Night Witches is punishing, but I could never run a game like that Russian TV show because people would think I was a mean, horrible GM that was trying to murder them all and like just make them suffer because it was rough. Like, it was like so rough. Like, there's a woman who didn't do anything wrong. You know what I mean? And then it turns out that like she saw, like she's flying the plane and she sees her mother and child who are trying to leave bombed by Nazis in front of her face. And then her husband's missing. And then she finds out where her husband is, but then he's not even her husband. And then she finally finds her husband. And then when she gets to him, he dies in front of her face. Like, it was just like every bad thing that could ever happen to this person just happens to this person. And like, I could never GM that for American audiences because they'd be like, what is this? This is like, it would be totally inappropriate.
Russian storytelling really is its own thing.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It makes sense for their culture, but it's very different.
Yeah, but if everybody were aware of that media, right, then we could do that. And so I think there's sometimes just thinking about what are the sort of the accepted tropes in certain things, and are people aware of them? And you can't necessarily punish people for not knowing what those tropes are.
If you're trying to improve the general situation in a Russian story, bad things are going to happen to you. Bad things. Don't try to improve things. Just suffer. That's the Russian way.
Mr. Awful McPherson says, oh yeah, Russian storytelling has a horrible martyrs complex problem. Although American is similar. I think the difference is that Americans like to win at the end, right? Like the Americans have to win.
Winning in Russian storytelling is surviving.
Yeah. My mom watches Russian TV shows. It's a shit show. And there's something about like the noble surviving that happens a lot, where like you survived all this terribleness, and you lived another day, that I noticed in all the Russian storytelling, whereas in the American ones, then you get the job and then you fall in love and you win all of the things like at the end, which was not what they were going for, right? And so it gets interesting to think about those differences in storytelling. Do you think there's like a Dutch way of storytelling that is different, or do you think that it's sort of in there? Like how do you think, like, what do you think in your experience, because you're watching all these, you're inundated with American media, but you have your own, so what differences do you see? If
Dutch stuff is smaller. We're not as hooray for capitalism. We don't like people getting a big head, like being humble and being like, that's good enough. That's what we like. We like people being sober. That's how we call it.
See, Spider Mix is saying, I'm contrasting it to the Mexican telenovela style, which also has a lot of like misery leaved on people.
High drama.
How do you think, I'm just wondering about this, if thinking about this idea about not getting too big of a head, sober, how do you think this translates to D&D, which is all about the zero to hero, right? Starting off small and then ending up 20th level and able to stop time with all of the money and killing dragons. Like, how do you think, do you think there's another way in which you inflect that story?
Upon reflection, a lot of the D&D players are just there to do the job that I've seen. Like, there's the few who are like, no, we're gonna go big. But most of them are just like, you got a job? We will do that job for you.
Oh, that's so interesting.
No deviation.
Huh. Well, I was thinking, going back to that story you started with, the very first campaign that you ran into, they ended making a theme park.
Yeah.
As opposed to, I suppose, being the emperor of like an empire. Didn't sort of take over the world. It
was slightly more low key, but like that's at high levels D&D.
Yeah.
Like that's insane power levels. Like you have to do the big stuff because everything is big at that level. You can't just save a village from goblins. That's what you did at the early levels.
Although, but their big was an amusement park.
That's big. Amusement parks are huge.
But it's
a large venture.
It is, but it's not like a control power fantasy. And I thought that was interesting.
It's not reality hopping or like owning a kingdom, but it's significant. It's not nothing. And as you're a kid, that's like what could be better than that?
Oh, that's so interesting. I think this is, Jer says, I think that's where the storyteller system comes in. Even at your strongest, someone can come along and murderize you. That's true. It's, it's so fascinating because you think about, do you need progression, right, in your RPGs? And there are a lot of games where you don't progress in that same way. Like in D&D, the difference between level 1 and level 20 is
huge.
Like it's orders of magnitude.
Magic missiles to wish is a big jump.
Yeah. from light to wish, like that is a big jump. But there are a lot of systems where you don't look all that different, right, from beginning to end, whatever that might mean.
Yeah, in the storyteller system, basically the same.
Yeah,
you've got maybe an ability point extra here, maybe one there. But that's not a huge difference either to get an extra ability point, like to learn another language or to pick up how to open locks or whatever. Like your disciplines are the biggest power thing, and even that's fairly minor.
I mean, everybody wants their level 5, but it's also interesting that when I think about
turn into a wolf. Woo! That's not huge. That's not I'm going to rule the world now.
But I also think what's fascinating about, let's say, Vampire, I mean, I can't speak for the other ones, but I can for Vampire at least, is that when you start, you have a generation and you can never get super big, right? Like you are limited by your generation, which means you're not getting 6 dots in anything. Like they have got like 6 up powers, but those are for NPCs basically. You're never going to get that massively powerful. Like you're already
I played 2 games where we were elders. One is because we'd lived that long. That was the Transylvania Chronicles. That's supposed to take place over hundreds of years. and the other is us trying to figure out a game that would work with my cousin, because he was always playing with us. And the game we settled on is he's going to be the Malkavian Primogen, and the rest of the players are going to be his childer, and their job is to keep him alive. Campaign, go.
I feel like there's a story about your cousin that you are not telling me. Is he like a massive power gamer? Tell me about your cousin.
He makes a lot of weird choices sometimes, like the merit, what's it called? Common sense. That was invented for him. Because he would, in his first game of Vampire, he walks the streets as a vampire at night, and he comes across a bank. And he's like, oh, I'm going to rob the bank. And he tosses a brick through the window. And then the cops show up, and he's like, what? What are they doing here? You threw a brick through the window of a bank, buddy. What did you think was going to happen?
Consequences.
Think about it. Okay.
I really feel like, nobody get mad at me, but I really feel like that's a D&D problem. I find that players who
it could be, yeah, who
are really, really into D&D, or who like for whom that's their gaming experience, and there are DMs who will do it, who will give you consequences, but oftentimes a lot of players feel like they live in a space where they can just rob banks, right? They can do whatever. They can break into places and steal things and kill people, and there really aren't any sort of consequences. And then they play in a game set in the 21st century with police forces, and they're like, what? you mean I can't just, right, as Falcon of Venom says, I just can't fireball and rob the shop? What? You're like, no. There's jails.
Yeah, there's always consequences.
Yeah.
That was actually a pretty fun campaign where we had to keep my cousin alive, because I had this whole political thing that the prince was in decline and this other Primogen was on the rise, and he was siding with the prince, which was not a good idea. She was on her way out, and I tried to make that clear. But the rest of the players did get it, and it was working against him, because it did not end up working out. It was fun. It was so fun.
Who was the prince?
The prince was a Zemitzi, because we were set in some dark European town that was mostly cloudy all the time, so we had more time to run around. And her thing was that when she flesh crafted stuff, because that's what Zemitzi do, they take corpses and they turn them into other stuff. The stuff that she created was beautiful, but not like super practical, because like she had this really good looking scorpion thing that she'd made, but it would just fall apart.
I worry about them sometimes. I worry about like their hobbies.
Yeah.
They make awful mixtures. Like, oh, that sounds like London. I'm sure the
it does, yeah. But it was somewhere in, I think, like Austria.
Oh, not always corpses, Krellin says. They really enjoy flesh sculpting.
They're alive because the thing's alive. So
living people.
They have to be. Yeah.
I'm like, ow. Ow. It's just like, oh no. Oh my goodness.
But I liked weaving that sort of incompetence into even that part of her. And that also worked into like her how she ruled over the vampires. And it was time for her to go.
Ooh, wow. What I think is really, I mean, I've sort of noticed your fan fiction and your writing and your impressive sort of like thoughtfulness about the things that you're writing and your sort of creativity. And I imagine being able to play and jam and sort of create these stories is one of these sort of really great outlets for that creativity.
It always was. I always had like one great idea, and I'd be like, I'm going to make a campaign out of that. And then I would figure out that one great idea does not a campaign make. But it's still fun, and you improv the rest, and everyone has a good time. Like, one of my most favorite things is also in Vampire, like there's, the worm.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so that's a lot of corruption.
It's all werewolf.
With a Cthulhu twist. And there's no reason I can't use that bad guy in my vampire game. So I made a factory in the town who was recently taken over of bought out by like a worm company, and they were like tainting the product. And the great idea was, what was the product? What makes it extra horrible? Toothpaste.
Oh,
Can you imagine
nice.
like corrupted toothpaste? You stick that stuff in your mouth.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah, I love that.
I love that. That's really, really good. That's good. That's nice.
Yeah, so that was the whole campaign, and it ended up in a little fight on the roof of that factory with the new owner, who was actually a patsy, but they hadn't figured that out. They were just like, "Oh, it's a vampire. He runs the place. Okie doke. Let's kill him. Problem solved."
Crit Twitch. It's like, you sick GMs. Maybe. Yeah.
Why don't you go brush your teeth, buddy?
That's right. You just like Falcon of Venom. My inner werewolf player wants to burn it down. Burn it down.
Right, but like, that's werewolves. These are vampires.
So they can't burn it
It's a completely new thing for them.
Although there was some burning in that campaign, that vampire campaign that Jer was running. People had to make some checks, but just random side note. I saw an opera, and it was a production of Hansel and Gretel by Offenbach, and it was in Germany. And they set it. It was very cool. They set it after World War II, so like before, like when Germany's still in rubbles, right? And so like nobody has anything.
Most of Europe.
Yeah, like Europe was all in rubble, and so like nobody had anything. And so when the children spill the thing of milk, right, that's like a huge big deal because they have nothing. And so the kids are sent off to go and try to find stuff, and they go off and they find the witch. But, and this was really, I thought, really interesting, the witch was portrayed as like an American Betty Crocker or like Sarah Lee, like, and like her hut was actually like a big American style factory, like a cookie factory that was like just sort of like moved in, and it was highly mechanized, and it was very cool. So it made me think about your
that is interesting,
toothpaper.
Because we did have a lot more American influences after that, because they helped us rebuild.
And so there was this kind of really sort of ambivalent sort of relationship to like this witch who was,
yeah, thanks, but it's also a little weird.
It's a little weird. Yeah, he's Offenbach, but he's sometimes not Bach. Sometimes he's less Offenbach. Volpa says the vamps take it over. They take over the
exactly. That's what they did, but that didn't solve the problem because it would still happen.
Oh, did they care?
They did, but like not a lot, because I had them focused on other things. Like I presented them with like this business conspiracy, like who is it, and what was actually happening. I sort of did in the background.
I want to ask you, you're not currently GMing anything, right?
Nope.
What would you, because, okay, here we are, 2019. The world is open to us. There's so many more games. There's so many exciting players. There's so much going on. It's a long time since our youth. What do you want to run? Like, what are you inspired? Like, what's in your mind?
I don't know. Like, my big thing is that I could run a thing and it would be good. Yeah. I think I'm a pretty decent GM, not like top shelf, but I do okay. But what I want to do is help someone else GM. So to have them do the thing, and then I'm going to analyze it and figure out from, okay, we need this scene, and this is the thing that we should be focusing on, and what's up with this character, and then figure it out. That's what I want to do, but that's not really the normal, common thing. But like, I want to be the writer's room, and I've said that before. That's what I think is fun.
And of course, I'm trying to think how many RPG producer, right? Levi and Sea Spider are like, RPG producer, RPG showrunner. And I'm thinking of, like, I think one of the only places I know that did that was, come on, Vast.
Yeah.
Right?
It's not common. Most people, they say, look, this is this whole story you're going to tell. Great, GM. This is all you. Go nuts. And like, whoever you are as a GM, you're not perfect. You're going to make mistakes. And there's stuff you're not good at. So, and maybe some of that stuff that you're bad at is stuff that I'm good at. And when we would work together, we could do something that's greater than the sum of its parts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Vast, right, on Geek and Sundry, they had a writer's room.
Yeah. I don't know if that was helpful, because I did watch some of that, and I thought it was too strict into episode status. I thought it was too written.
Yeah, I suppose that's one of the problems about having a writer's room. That then things are written, right?
Well, you don't have to write entire scenes. You just have to. It's the same as when you're a GM. That's what they write. You write what's important. You make charts about what characters are like. There's all kinds of stuff you can do. Writing is complicated, and it's a huge thing. Just like storytelling, there's a lot of stuff that gets involved when you're telling stories.
I think the tricky thing is that when people think of having a writer, if they're not thinking about Vast, because they probably aren't, they're thinking about getting modules where things are all fully written. They're like, that's what the writer does for me, right? They write a module for me and then I do it. And I think that's the model that people have in their mind, right?
Who likes modules? I don't like modules. As someone who grew up with D&D and Vampire, because Vampire modules were horrible. I did not have a great time playing the Transylvania Chronicles. The Transylvania Chronicles is, remember all that important stuff you read about in the books? Now you can stand in the back of the room while that happens. Isn't that amazing?
That sounds fun.
Look, they're signing that important document and you're here. You're not involved in any way, but you're here.
That sounds,
joy, oh joy.
That sounds bad.
It was not great.
C Spider says, I had a couple of sessions where a GM had an assistant, and I thought they were some of the best sessions I've had.
Yeah, there were a few of those GM talks that they did. There was this one duo that they interviewed where they would help each other out, where one would prep encounters, I think that was, and the other one would actually run the session. And they would trade off when they would go to a different place, because one had world built one continent and the other one did the other one. Yeah,
but of course that's framed as co-GMs, right? Yeah. And I think the problems with the word writer is that when people have a limited idea of what that might mean, right? Yeah. They think of
once you stick a label on something, that's what it is. And I want to help someone GM. That's what I want to do.
Falcon says, I've been a GM assistant, one of which I played a villain from a Prometheus game. And C Spider says, kind of the LARP way to GM. Yeah, I mean, I have been assistant GMs in LARPs as well, where the GM is but that of course is tricky, because with the LARP, you're not really assistant GMing. What you're doing is you're playing NPCs, right? The GM is okay, I need you to play the prince. Here's what you need to do. And you're got it, right? And you go off and you do what you're supposed to do, which is play the NPC.
That could also add something to an RPG. If I were to be a GM and I had a female sidekick to do all the female parts, that would add a whole other thing, because I'm not as convincing as a woman as she would be.
LARP, Falcon says, LARP is hard, was part of the storyteller team for a year and a half. Yeah. And I think I think that's very cool. And I think it's interesting to think about the word RPG producer or RPG showrunner is a different word than writer, right? And that then implies that
they all have different
sort of implications, right?
To it.
And maybe if you're I want to be an RPG producer, that might, or showrunner. Yeah, that's why I was thinking of the more showrunner position on classical TV. Yeah, showrunner might be a word that could open up people's minds to the sort of the thing that you're thinking about. They might not be so sort of stuck on module making, because it's
I get to do it sometimes. I've thrown some ideas at Chelsea that she's used. That's great. She had that the little things. Remember the RPG with the children D&D guys that she did. She came up with that on stream, where she did a world building thing, and I was very active in the chat, and so a lot of stuff I said got implemented. The bad guy is a witch, And that was because I said it should be a witch, because that's the classical, obvious villain for a children's adventure.
That thing you like says session editor, and actually I think there's such, you had said earlier, PH, there's such power, there's power in naming, right? And there really is. And I think that what you want to do is something that is very valuable, but I think because it's a new thing within the field, finding the names that let people understand what that might be and what kind of value that is would be really important. And yeah, because assistant GM doesn't always necessarily get it. Co-GM might not, like there are things in there that, like, because I feel like what you're talking about, when I've heard you talk about this before in the past as well, what it seems to me that you're talking about is something that is not a writer in that sort of fixed module way, but something much more custom and much more tailored and sort of bespoke, right? Like you're not pumping out a bunch of ready-made suits that people can just put on, but like you're really sort of wanting to sort of help tailor and refine.
I want to be the sounding board for the GM and toss their ideas back and forth until it's good. Until it's as good as they and I can make it.
Maybe make the title the job description. Yeah, I mean, for me, and of course, everybody has different strengths. Like I am not good at drawing dungeons. Because I'm like, well, you want it to be a really good dungeon, right? That like, but I was not the kid that sat around with the graph paper just drawing dungeons all the time. And I have, I think I can do it, but I think the problem for me is that dungeons that you find in Dungeons and Dragons do not exist in the real world. So I have a hard time conceiving of them. Do you know?
Why is this thing here? What does it do?
Yeah. So I get stuck.
How come no one can go in and out of the place without dying?
This is what I'm trying to say. I have a hard time. Like, there are only so many Mad King labyrinths you can make before it stops making a lot of sense to me. Sea Spider says, in the end, the GM is part of the game. This PH position is someone looking in from the outside to be able to give it some kind of distance, right? So that thing you like says, so RPG writer that isn't going to write everything for the DM, but will make things cooler and add some pizzazz and flair.
Yeah.
Falcon says, I use dungeons and mazes from books and video game maps. Yeah, that's what I do. Like, I mean, when it comes to, like, one thing I like about modules, like, there's still one that I have from way back in the day. I don't use it. What I use is the map. I was like, here is a map. Thank you very much. I'm going to take this map. And I am a subscriber of there's a Patreon, two minute maps.
People make cool stuff.
Yeah.
You can steal it.
And they make these, and this guy makes these maps. They're great maps. And I'm like, thanks. Because I could spend my time better than, like, there are people who are really good at making maps. Like, they have campaign cartographer, which does not work on a Mac, and they know how, like, they can do that. And like, I'm like, thank you so much for that.
There's this one module that I read, and it was like a whole little dungeon thing, and the only thing I remember is that it ended with a sickly dragon. Now that's fun, a sickly dragon. That's something you see every day. Mostly they're just super impressive people, and this one was sick. And I kept that in my head, and I had it planned as the first bad guy in my Souls campaign, which was a famine was a big part of that. And so having a sickly dragon who's not able to find any food was a perfect, like, entry bad guy.
Jer says, I want to make a dungeon that's a house and all the traps are children's toys.
So just a house.
And I think that's like one of my hang-ups when it comes to, like, dungeon crawls, is that I always try to make things that make sense, and then they're not big dungeons, because big dungeons don't necessarily make a lot of sense, if that makes any sense, right? Like, it's a house, or it's a ruin, or, like, and I can make things that are dungeon-esque, but
I have that too.
Yeah. And so,
I keep trying to think of how it would actually work.
Yeah.
So I had this horribly trapped corridor, but an illusionary wall that they could just step into and walk past. And then the players got there and they were like, okay, let's detect magic. And I'm like, the entire wall is magic, because it was an illusion. And they were like, oh, fuck. Stay away from that wall. You're magical. So, okay.
I mean, I can imagine things like a carnival or a house of mirrors, like things
that's
like
easier.
Yeah, those things I can imagine. But here's the problem with like trying to imagine how it works, right? Like if I do a dungeon, like old school dungeon, I want like half of it, all the traps have already been sprung. Like
I did that.
Right, because somebody went through and they died.
And they came across those corpses. And then they got some loot.
And then I'm like, but that's not as challenging. I was like, right, but I feel like in the real world of this universe, if there are adventures that go into dungeons regularly, some of them would have been there already.
Yeah, I did that. I had this giant statue with a broken axe, so there was nothing for it to use, but it would go. And then everyone was like, ah! But of course nothing would happen because it had an empty hand.
Right, because somebody went through already.
Yeah, and they broke that axe handle, and we're like, okay, good enough.
Volpa says, "Well, I have friends that start all their campaigns at the exact same at the same end, no matter the game. That is just one giant intelligent mimic." Oh,
that's not good.
That is ouch. Ouch. Valgmas, is there an attic whisperer? Yeah, and I think that like there's like a particular glee in and I will say, right, like Matt Mercer, everyone's like, oh, Matt Mercer's like, he's all about the story. And I was like, yeah, he loves dungeons. Like he loves him some dungeons. He likes the traps of dungeons, the puzzles of dungeons, figuring out like what is the challenge of this dungeon level going to be. Like he loves that stuff, and that has never been where my mind sits naturally.
Yeah, because when he describes his weird dungeon, he's like, I believe that that's there and that it makes sense for it to be there. Yeah, because he's that good of a GM.
But also,
he seems to be good at everything.
Yeah, but also sometimes they don't necessarily make sense except in the context of it being a dungeon, right? Like we're gonna do this weird thing, right? And that's the thing. I just have a hard time thinking that way. Like it takes effort. Like I can do it, or I can just get, if we're gonna do a dungeon crawl, I can just get a map, and that will make things so much faster.
Like an actual big dungeon.
Yeah, like a mega dungeon. Like I'm not gonna like
You're in a dungeon crawl right now. You're in a haunted house where you have to kick open every door, and then there's a monster or a trap.
And I feel like I could probably design that one, that Ghost of Saltmarsh. I could probably do because it's a house, and the house makes sense to me. And I was like, okay.
And it's haunted, and that's the problem that you keep running into room and room.
And I actually did run. One of the very first GURPS games that I ran was a basically no magic fantasy campaign, and one of the things they did was a haunted house, except that it wasn't haunted in a malevolent way, in the sense that ghosts were going to attack them.
Like that?
It was basically, they were echoes of things that had happened, right? So they went through this haunted house, and they're seeing scenes of what had happened in the past, and they basically found, like, because they were told to go to this place by this old woman who's like, come to this place, like, who hired them to go there, this old woman, and they're like, okay, and they get there and they're like, oh dang, and they saw these things that had happened to her when she was a small child, and they realized that the Duke was not a good person, and was also not
nobility.
Yeah, and so that they sort of got her story, and it actually turns out she wasn't actually even alive, this old woman. She was a ghost who was trying to get people to find out what had happened, to uncover the truth of the current Duke's murder of like her entire family.
And it's like, okay, now we know. Are we done? Do you want to print it in the newspaper?
And the question becomes, what are they going to do about that? Like now they know the secret that the Duke is illegitimate and also a really terrible, terrible person. And what are they going to do about it? And so that became their... Because for me, all I want is to give you hard choices. Like, I just want to give you some hard choices and find out what you're going to do. And I want the choices to be such that I don't know what you're going to do. And so I gave them...
Me too. That's what I...
Yeah.
But I'm bad with them as well, because then I just want to get to that choice. I want to see what you do with that choice. And then I don't take my time as much as I should getting to that choice. You know, when I don't make a big deal out of them entering the town and describing the town, because that's not important. It doesn't do anything dramatically. I just want them to get to the choices. But it does matter.
Yeah.
It sets the mood and it builds the tension.
And Mr. Awful Person says inside a Republican uprising, and that would have been interesting. They didn't do that. But if they did, I would be like, I'm not the GM that will say, well, that's not okay. I'm going to contradict myself. I'm going to say that I'm not the GM that says no, and I will tell people that I say no all the time, and that is my persona. I will say no to you. I will say no, and like I will say no if what you're talking about is just not at all possible in the realm of physics. Like in this game, you actually can't jump off a cliff and survive. So no, I mean you can, but you'll die. That's on you. So like I will say no on things that are not possible in the world at all. But if you're gonna I will not say no to things like we're gonna start a Republican uprising. Like if you can do it, like it may not happen, but if you can find out a way to make it happen, then it's gonna happen. I'm not gonna say no to that.
You might throw out are you sure you want to do this? Because
do you remember the French Revolution? Okay, go on. You can,
it's a bank. It's gonna have security.
It's gonna have security. And the thing is, I think that for all of my talk of saying no, which I will do, I don't generally say no after the game starts. Like I will say no before the game starts, but once the game starts, I don't tend to say a lot of no, because like once it starts, because it's this, we start the simulation, and once the simulation starts, we see where it goes, and that's what happens, right? Like what happens is what happens.
What happens is what happens. That's how my cousin ends up being a captive when every bit of evidence tells him that he should really not do the thing he's going to do.
You know, sometimes people make those choices, and you're just like, are you sure? Are you sure?
And he's like, yes, that's what my character would do.
And you're like, all right.
Okay, then. And then all his family members abandon him.
So
God's above.
So Dracula says, my name is Count Dracula. Come back with me to my castle at night and don't tell anyone where you're going. PC says, okay. And you're like, really? You get a bad vibe about the Dracula who wants you to make sure that you don't tell anyone.
I'm sure it's fine.
Are you going to tell anyone? No. Oh, okay.
Can't GM power me to say I have a bad vibe. Like, he's got a great dress sense. Everything's fine.
You can only do so much.
Public figure, what's he gonna do?
What's he gonna do? You can only do so much. Yeah. You can only ask, are you sure?
No, we like, because we play vampire, we have like the saying that what that is like when you charge the werewolf. That means you die.
Yeah.
Like you can charge the werewolf, but then you die.
Volpa says, if I tell mom, she won't let me go. And you're like, why do you think that is?
You've got a good mom there.
Like, why do you think your mom doesn't want you to go up in the dark castle with Dracula alone?
If you taunt people with guns, they're gonna shoot you.
I'm just saying.
Ooh, I got welcome to the chat room. That's fun.
Oh, isn't that weird when that happens? I don't know why that happens.
So wacky.
I don't understand Twitch sometimes. I don't know what it means. Okay, so I'm not going to keep, because I know it's like dark 30. It's inappropriate in the morning for you where you're at.
Still warm, so.
Oh, it's true. Dracula has candy, so it's totally fine.
Candy, nice.
Just come to my castle. I'll give you candy. Oh, all right. And no.
Is it free though? Is it just a store? I'm not going to the store in the middle of the night.
Okay, wait. Wouldn't that be the worst if Dracula's like, I have candy in my castle. Come with me late at night. Secret. And you go and it's just like one of those gift shops, like at the end of a ride. And he's like, I will sell you all of the things. And you're like, oh man, you're going to charge for all of them.
I would love to have you for dinner in my restaurant.
No garlic.
This is how I find customers. I walk across the town saying, come to my castle. And if you don't want to go, I use my special hypnotic powers on you.
You want to make reservation at my restaurant.
Yep.
Crit Twitch is like, that's a plot twist. And it is.
Worst big bad ever? No, I could make that work. That's a great comedic villain.
Oh my gosh. I can just see it.
You can't leave yet? You haven't had seconds. I'm still not in the black.
And then, of course, there are all these hidden fees on the bill, and you're like, what?
Remember to tip your waiter. Who is me?
We do. We have the Count from Sesame Street is what we have. Would you like a timeshare? You will come.
Did you know that this castle is for sale?
And then, of course, it's like the Hotel California. You can never leave, right? Like, you can't go. Oh my goodness.
That's just an amazing story right there.
Oh, that's good. Whew, now I feel like my cheeks are hurting because I smiled too much. So what do you...
That stuff I can do. I can bullshit like this whole thing together. That's what I'm good at.
Dracula, come to my castle. PC shows up with an actual white castle at the top of a dark foreboding hill, surrounded by bogs and swamps and emitting a green mist.
That would be a good twist too.
It's just a little white castle. Oh my goodness. So tell me, what are your hopes and dreams when it comes to gaming? Like, you're doing, like, I feel like all of us have been like stepping up our game. And so what do you want? Yeah. What do you want in the future? What's next for you?
I do feel like the entire community is stepping up the game more and more.
I agree.
So to join a slightly bigger game that actually picks me and not like a community game like Maggie's game is. I love Maggie's game, but it's not my game. I'm not like one of the main. I am one of the main characters because that's how it works out, but it's not my story really. So like I would like to be invited to be in an RPG show. Like, it doesn't have to be super long. In fact, I would prefer it not be like this endless campaign, but I would like that. Like, I have my pirate game, which is going great-ish. It's difficult for my lawful good paladin to be a pirate.
Fair.
It's not easy.
Fair.
But it's a smaller scale campaign.
Is it Saltmarsh?
Yeah, it's the Skull and Shackles. You've
yes.
I heard you talk about that in one of the previous chats, that you'd done something with that, but it was a card game, right?
Yeah, the card game, yes. I'm currently playing in that campaign, the card game campaign, which I love that card game, by the way. Like, I just think that's a really great game. I recommend it. Although they have a new edition now, so I don't know.
Always makes things tricky. Do you go to the new one? Do you stick with the old one?
Yeah, I don't know. Oh, side note, do you like puzzle games?
Sure.
You look so suspicious right now. So skeptical. Not RPGs like board games. I'm just saying that, like, because I just picked up Time Stories, and that was really fun.
I love board games, as long as they're not like horribly complicated.
Yeah. Vulpus says the new revision is pretty good.
Diplomacy. I don't want to play diplomacy.
Hrothgar Thorson wanders into a very confused looking PaladinHulk.
Yeah, but that's all the time. I'm always confused. Like, what is this?
Levi says,
I've got a puzzle for you.
Here's a puzzle. No, I wasn't. Do you like puzzle games? You don't get to leave unless you answer this riddle.
Candy.
No, I was just saying that I played Time Stories, and I really enjoyed it. And if you like puzzles, I think that you might enjoy that board game. It was fun.
Yeah, I like puzzles, but I like all board games, really.
Now, what are your faves? Do you have like? What are like? Or let me ask. Let me rephrase the question. What are the trends that you like? Co-op versus competitive, time. Like, what kinds of things do you like?
I don't have like a super strong favorite in those kinds of things. I prefer co-op, I think, unless I don't like the trader mechanic. If I'm the trader, like whatever's going on, I want to know like who's who and what's what. That I like, because then I can deal with the reality. And when I don't know what the reality is, that's not something I enjoy a lot. But I don't care if it's cooperative or if it's competitive. Both are fine. I usually take a very direct approach regardless. Being like, I'm your enemy and I'm gonna smash you. So, get ready. I like the trader mechanic in Dead of Winter, but I didn't like it in Betrayal on the House of Haunted Hill. See, that's where I do like it, because I'm not actually the traitor. I don't have to do anything to make me the traitor. I just am the traitor now, and I'm like, okay.
But see, it changed my motivation. Like, I got all invested being not the traitor, and then then it turns out that I was the traitor. Now I've got to change my whole mindset, where I was like working so hard to be part of the team. I was like, we're the team, and I was like, now I don't get to be part of the team anymore. So if I'm going to be the traitor, I want to know from the beginning, so I don't get all,
Like, wow, I'm a vampire.
What? Oh no. I just don't want to be disappointed in turning, like, you know what I mean? Like, I want to not get really invested not being the traitor and then be the traitor.
I understand that.
Yeah. I know it's not a board
other
game.
times where you're the traitor, and either you suck at lying like me, and it doesn't go anywhere. Everyone's like, "Oh, you're obviously the traitor." Okay, we're just gonna play the game knowing that you're the traitor. And I'm like, that's not fun. Or they don't figure it out. We're like, "You were the traitor, you asshole. We can never trust you again." That's not fun either.
Some of my favorite sessions of Dead of Winter was when there was no traitor, but we didn't know that.
See, that's also fun if you don't know for sure.
Yeah. That there could be a traitor, and I think that is what is nice about Dead of Winter is that there may not be a traitor. And if
I've done that in RPGs too, where I'm like, okay, I'm gonna message one of you, and they're gonna be the traitor, and then you message no one.
Yeah.
Or you message everyone, you're not the traitor.
Yeah. I love that.
That instantly creates like so much tension.
Just a little, like when I said in Night Witchers, I was like, okay. I said to them, hey, if I sent them all a DM. I was like, if any of you want to tell Olga Barsakova something in secret, you can just DM me. If you want to give me some kind of dirt on anybody, just let me know. But I just did that. And I just did that so that they all knew that it was possible that somebody might have. They didn't, because they were very loyal to each other. But they didn't know, right? So that was nice.
I would have played that character. I would have been the super loyal Russian.
Right? Because that's interesting to see how do you
came up with this whole speech in my head while I was watching the show, because that's how I work. I come up with narratives on my own about why my character would agree that finding all these lavender women was important. And it wasn't because being a lesbian was bad, because like no one needs that. But since we know that lesbians get sent off away from the front and we need everyone at the front, it was important that no lesbians be found and sent off away. So gotta cut out all that lesbian stuff that you guys are doing,
like real early.
You can just pick that up after the war.
Yeah, and I think that's like, for me, it's like really interesting to think about. Okay, well, how do you make this make sense, right? And I keep thinking about the fact that this was the only country that allowed women to fight in their military fly in that way, right? I mean, like, there were women who were in the resistance movements and whatnot, right? But this was it, and the kind of pride that you would have in being allowed to do this thing that no one else would let you do, right? That's kind of a quality that you could have. And there's a way in which I could see you just totally nobody in the stream is advocating that, like the way that you could really believe in Mother Russia, because it gives you these opportunities that no other country would allow you to have at that moment, right? It's like thinking about what it would mean to be loyal, right, to that ideal, and finding a
Russians
character.
Are very interesting with that. They're very, very invested and loyal to their country, but not their government.
Right. Yeah. And then how do you create a character who can do that in an interesting way, right? And I think
that's what I came up with. Yeah. That's how this character would go about that.
Yeah, and for me, like, it's all about trying to come up with somebody interesting in whichever game, right? Like, if you're in a game and it's an evil campaign, let's say, because I've been in evil campaigns.
Me too.
And how do you make an evil character that's interesting and not boring, right? Because, like, you don't want someone who's just like, I've got a curly mustache, which I do. I'm Snugly Whiplash. I like killing kittens. And you're like, well, that's not interesting. That's just boring. So how can you make somebody that makes sense, where you can think, oh, all right, right? Like, I understand how you got there and where that is coming from, so that you have something to do as a character.
Everyone wants a comfortable life. It's just, some people take some extra steps to get there.
Krellin, kittens have claws. They hurt me. That's why I had to kill the kittens. Or they're just tasty.
My mother preferred the kitten to me. How dare she?
How dare she? She gave the kitten the food. She gave me no food. Interesting evil is someone who funds the orphanage to use it as a front to hide the weapons export business.
Exactly. And then they get invested in that orphanage a little.
Yeah.
Because it also has to work.
Right. And I find, Handsome Jack is a really good example of how someone ends up such an evil person. Oh, in the Fable games?
Borderlands.
Oh, I was thinking of... I think it's a different kind of a Jack. Yeah, and the thing is, I'm not saying that all of your villains have to be sympathetic. Right? Like, because, like, that's also a trope where, like, well, really, they're not really bad. No, I think you can go full on bad. I think you can actually have a person who's not a good person at all, but they have to make sense.
Yeah, they have to have a background that leads them to this decision, like some kind of goal that they're after, hopefully.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it... Although I suppose there's a place for different kinds of storytelling where you'd have two-dimensional...
Villains come in all shapes and sizes.
Or funds an orphanage to create a child military. Or funds an orphanage to get the perfect vessel for their lich that they want to lichify.
I think that's great. That's amazing.
Right, and you're like, oh. And I also...
That's also a great backstory for just a regular character who is in that orphanage, and then they get the chosen one. And like, I don't know if I want to sacrifice this cool kid to the lich guy, because this kid's really awesome, which is why the lich is picking.
Yeah. I'm
just going to take this kid and put him over here.
I'm just going to put them right over there for a moment. And I also think about the ways in which people often will confuse good with nice. And...
Oh, yeah, that's very different.
And bad with mean, right? And so, like, thinking about characters who are good but mean, but evil and nice. Like, those things, like, I like mixing up those things a little bit.
Yeah, me too.
Just because, like, come on now. Like, sometimes you're nice, but you're not good. Sometimes you're really mean, but you are good, right? You just are brusque. Like, oh, Krellin says the mayor from Buffy Season 3. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, affably evil.
Yeah, that's a great villain.
So good. So good. That was, and I thought that was really well done. It was the mayor was one of my favorite big bads, actually.
And he had redeeming qualities, like his relationship with Faith made that season interesting. Because you knew it was bad, but there was also good in it. Like, he was getting attention and wasn't all bad.
And her friends were not being nice to her. Side note.
Yeah, the gang was horrible to her.
I was so mad about that. In D&D, lawful good and lawful evil should be almost identically played, in my humble opinion.
Okay, I don't agree, but okay, you do you.
I mean, I can see bureaucrats, right, being sort of...
That's lawful neutral.
Well, that is true. A good bureaucrat is lawful neutral. I could see it.
The rules are the important thing to a lawful neutral character, because they're to morality, but really invested in the law.
Yeah, order. A code.
If only we have order, everything else will work out. What does that mean if things work out? I don't know. I'm busy filling out this form.
Which could go poorly or go well, right? And Levi's like, I'm suspicious of this good bureaucrat. I'm very suspicious.
Yep. That makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. It is 9:30. I am not going to keep you much longer because I care about your sleeping habits.
Oh no, it's fine. I'm not even tired.
Lawful good is using a lot of better society. Lawful evil is using the lot of better friends and family.
There's a lot of different ways to get to that. Like, I like to think of lawful good as saying, okay, if we're good, we need laws, right? Those are handy to have, like a way to guarantee that things work out. That's what laws are for, to structure a system of goodness. That's what a lawful good character wants.
Jer has a lawful neutral antagonist who's created a military coup because he finds the current government corrupt.
Yeah, works. Perfect.
Yeah, and I mean, of course, the problem is that what evil is in D&D is described different ways in different editions.
Yeah.
They're quite inconsistent with what evil means.
There's different things. There's just normal evil, and there's, with capital E evil, when you're undead or a demon.
Yes. And they also, at one point in time, I think in 3.5, they described evil as being selfish. And I was like, well, okay. All right, then.
It's definitely a big ingredient in the whole evil mix.
But you could be selfish and just do only good things. right? Like you could like because that could
Accidentally?
no, because it makes you feel good about yourself. You know what I mean? Like you could be like
Right.
you could be doing everything only for self-aggrandizement and for so that people will love you. Like you could be doing like your motivation can be completely selfish, but you spend
Metro Man
yeah,
from Megamind.
but you do all of the things you do are just bettering society, right? And technically, that would be evil according to D&D 3.5. And I was like, interesting. What can I do with this? How can I play with this and see what I can do with that, right? That might be interesting because I don't like alignments. So I'm always trying to poke and see where
It's just a way to think about it. Like just like with narrative structure. Like when you think of it as a law that you have to follow, it falls apart. It's just a way to think about it.
Yeah, that's right. And it's, you know, I think it's like
there's no movie that's great because it follows the 5-act structure perfectly.
yeah. I mean, or if it does, well, it's tricky, right? Like Shakespeare.
Like there are great movies that follow the 5-act structure perfectly, but that's not why they're great.
Yeah. They have other things going on, right? Like,
yeah,
because
it helps them be great, but it's not only because of that.
And you could be great in other ways. Like you could be great and do not that, right? And then also great for whom, right? Some people don't like movies that do that. They want their strange 5-hour experimental performance art film where there's a person sitting in a room.
Yeah. Is he ever going to get up from the chair?
No. Wait another 5 hours. We'll find out.
The movie's not actually about the person on the chair. It's about that light that keeps flickering in the hallway behind him. Tells the whole story.
Right, and everybody's got their different things going on. So I think just sort of recognizing that is good. All right, my friends, we're going to call it because I don't want it, because Europe. And I know people have got to go. They want Dune. They want Dune. My name, it's a killing word. And
I've never seen Dune.
Oh,
I know.
I'm not judging you. I'm just saying that if you see it, you could see it. If you don't see it, then you don't see it. But you could see it.
It's one of those huge things. Like I saw Blade Runner like 2 years ago. Because I say, you know what? I've never watched Blade Runner. Let's watch it. I'm like, okay, this is a movie.
Yeah, Krillin says Dune isn't required. Like, it is not required. And
it's get referenced a lot, and I love me some references.
It does. Like, I mean, if you want to get references, then yeah, you've got to watch Monty Python's Holy Grail, right? And you got to see. There's certain ones that you should probably see if you want the references. But see it for Sting's codpiece, yeah. And also see it because Patrick Stewart is in it. And that movie is 40 years ago, right? 40 years ago, and he looks the same. So, I mean...
He always looked the same. He was born bald.
He was born bald, and all the rest is just bald. So, everyone, I want you all to join me in giving a big thanks to PaladinHulk for being here. And
it was my absolute pleasure.
Oh, thank you. And I'm excited to see you do more RPGs, and I'm excited to mod with you, like fellow co-mod.
Let's get rid of all the terrible people on the internet. It's going to take us all the rest of our lives, but eventually they'll all be gone.
Soon, or they'll get better, I hope. Gone or better.
It could happen.
It could happen.
I've seen it happen to like 2 people.
It does sometimes, right? I like the little, Jared. I like that emote.
Cool emote.
That is a cool emote. I like it. And so, when will we see you next?
I don't know. Not for a while because I'm going on vacation for a week to Germany.
Oh, where are you going?
Berlin, because my dad works there now as a trade council member or something like that. I don't know what he does. Don't ask me. It's important.
Enjoy Berlin. Have some Spezi for me. And
if we can get it, we will.
Oh yeah, Spezi is more Bavarian, isn't it?
That's a Bavarian thing.
Yeah.
Like, I'm invested in finding it, but my dad's very meh about the whole thing because he's that's how he is.
For those of you who do not know what Spezi is, it's a soda. It's Bavarian, Southern German, and it's like a mix of Coke and Orange Fanta. And it's delish. It's really good.
There's so much good food in Bavaria. It's amazing.
Sorry, we were talking about donuts earlier, and now we're talking about food in Bavaria, and there's so much good. Like, people like to make fun of various countries saying they have bad food. Germany has really good food. It just depends on, like, and it's not all sausages. Like,
people were critical of me when I told them, like, the main reason I like going to Bavaria is the food. And they were like, why would you go to Bavaria for the food? You go to France, you go to Italy.
No. Like, I will tell you, some Kässpätzle, right, with some, like, Blaukraut, and maybe, like, some Sauerbraten.
Yeah, delish. That's what I want.
So delish. That thing you're like, I'm not a fan of orange Fanta, but you should try it, that thing, with Coke.
Who loves orange soda?
I'm not sure you sold me on that, but it may be a taste first kind of thing. Yeah, no, it's actually really good because it's got a bit of a bite to it. It's delish. It seems like a strange mix.
You'll know when you get there.
Yeah. There are knockoffs, but don't go with the knockoffs. Go with Spritzy. It's Spitze. So, all right, so you're not going to be around next week, but will we see maybe the week after on Maggie's stream?
Probably. The moment I get back, I'm back on the channel.
So that is Wednesdays on Margaret Crone.
Yeah.
What time?
15 minutes from now.
Oh, 10 o'clock?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So that's 10 p.m. Eastern time, 7 p.m. Pacific Coast time, and 4 in the morning Central European?
Yeah. My compatriots are raring to go. They're probably in the chat right now, getting ready to face the wrath of chat.
All right, chat wrath. All right, everyone. So have a really great vacation. Thank you, everybody in chat, for being here. And I will see you all tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern time for Night in the Woods, where we'll find out more about decaying rural towns and cats. That's what we're doing.
It's a strange game.
It is.
How are you liking it so far? Good?
I'm really, it's so evocative. It's got such a sense of atmosphere. And I feel like I know these people. Like, I know, like, there's a lot of subtext, right? I was like, right. She probably felt really alienated at college, right? Like a fish out of water. There probably weren't a lot of people from where she's from, where she's at. That probably made her feel like an imposter. She wanted to leave. But coming back home is not going to be great for her because she has been changed, right, by her experience. And now, right, and so, like, I can kind of see the character work, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah, there's a lot of depth in that game.
Yeah. Oh, and Volpes, there is more Where the Water Tastes Like Wine. They have a new expansion that comes out that's all about the Chinese American experience.
Where the water tastes like beer.
Where the water tastes like beer. Where the water tastes like wine, is that Italy or is that France, or is it both? Where the water tastes like wine?
I mean, everyone likes wine.
And Germany is where the water tastes like beer?
It would probably be more beer there.
Yeah.
And in Russia, it'd be vodka.
That's where the water tastes like vodka. In the United States, it's where the water tastes like Coke?
Watered down beer?
Watered down beer? Yeah. Where the water tastes like watered down beer. All right, everyone. I will see you all tomorrow, the rest of the week. And PH, thank you for being here. Wed. It's where the water tastes like wed. And I hope that I will catch PH around all of the communities, but also on Margaret Crone's channel in 2 weeks, in a fortnight.
That's a great show. You'll enjoy watching it.
And then maybe donate so that nice things can happen to Mortimer and not just bad things.
I mean, I'm going to make bad things happen to him anyway. So
try to balance it out some. Thank you, everybody. Take care, and I will catch you all on the flip side. Bye, everybody.
Farewell.